Good evening. Welcome to the special meeting of the Albion City Council, Thursday, November 2nd, 2017. If you have a phone or an electronic device, I ask you to place that on silent. I call this meeting to order, and I ask Clerk Domingo to call the roll.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Reed. Here. Lawler.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Spicer.
Here.
French.
Here.
And Mayor Brown.
Here. Public comments this evening. Persons addressing the council shall limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. We ask that you observe proper decorum. Please state your name and your address when you come to the podium, and then also the council won't answer any questions. This is an opportunity for the public to have comments on agenda items. Are there any public comments this evening?
Hi there. Hi. My name is Carlin Kernish, 903 Cram Lane, 3rd Precinct. I have a medical marijuana card. I am not a drug addict or a fiend. I am a patient who is in pain. 3 years ago, I was attempting to teach a young man on the autism spectrum when he got frightened by his surroundings. He grabbed my wrist and he ran as fast as he could to a nearby classroom, ultimately closing the door on my arm. I was in excruciating pain because I had a triangular fibrocartilage tear in my wrist, as my surgeon told me. He told me I could get an expensive surgery and potentially still lose mobility, or I could deal with the pain that would forever accompany a full range of motion. I elected the latter. Now, I'll speak for only myself, though I feel my truth may be universal. Pharmaceutical pain pills are dangerous, and their addiction rate is frightening. We have a nationwide opioid crisis. The real crisis in opioid, and specifically heroin addiction, is the direct result of the overproduction, unregulated distribution, and overprescription of painkillers. It's these legal prescription drugs that form the stepping stone to more serious, illegal, and dangerous drug use. For example, the CDC lists Michigan as one of 14 states that has statistically significant increases in total deaths from heroin and pain pill overdoses over the last 5 years. Marijuana is not a link in the chain of opioid addiction and ultimately death. Put simply, one cannot overdose on marijuana. And voters in Michigan and across these great United States are showing overwhelmingly that the benefits of legalization far outweigh the risks. As a result of our democratic decisions, we have a plant that can now legally bring relief to millions. Anyone who suggests otherwise is fear-mongering and ignorant to the benefits of marijuana, while simultaneously only recalling the propaganda taught to the nation during a time period, a very, very long time period, might I add, when ignorance and baseless fear concerning this plant dictated the policy regulating it. More importantly and more succinctly, I'll sum up the consequences of this council's vote today. You can either vote in favor of bringing jobs to Albion, or you can vote against bringing jobs to Albion. You can either vote in favor of new tax revenue coming into Albion to improve various aspects of our community, or you can vote for continuing the status quo.
Mr. Kernish.
Citizens of Albion, watch the vote closely and take it in careful consideration in future elections. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any? Okay.
My name is Kristen Tenza, and I'm here representing Wild Bills. I am not actually a resident of Albion, but I'm representing Wild Bills Tobacco. As I said, we opened Oasis Wellness Center, which is our medical marijuana company. We've been in contact with municipalities across the state. We've sat in on work sessions. We've attended the LARA meetings. We are a source of information, and we do hope that you'll use us. Referring to Public Act 281, the MMFLA, its legislative intent was to provide safe, regulated environments for patients to purchase their medicine and allow market forces to drive illegal home-growing operations out of the basements. The MMFLA takes a black market driven by illegal basement operations and legitimizes it into a real and commercial market. So application process is crucial in terms of crafting an ordinance, because any type of character can apply for these. So you have John Doe, who's been illegally growing or harvesting in his basement for 8 years. He sees the MMFLA as an opportunity to legitimize his illegal business. This is why doing a lottery system or first come, first serve for applicants is not a good idea, because then any type of character, including John Doe, can be approved. So how do we create a solution? I sent out a formal correspondence that has the Lansing ordinance attached with it. You can see sections 1300.5 and 1300.6 of that ordinance, and you will see a scoring rubric and criterion that is very specific, and it is intentionally set up to be for applicants. Just a quick list of some of the criterion that they're looking at for applicants in Lansing. Proof of legally acquired liquidity, a patient education program, security plan, employee training plan along with job creation expectancy, drug and alcohol awareness program, proposed business and municipal investment plan, proposed promotional and marketing plan, charitable plans and strategies, communal outreach plan, presentation of financial structure. Laura has made it very clear they will not be doing any vetting of applicants at the state level, so it is up to municipalities to take the reins and ensure that the right type of characters are spearheading the newly commercialized businesses. And the way to efficiently do this is to create a scoring system and have a rubric and implement that in your ordinance. And that concludes my public comment.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Peter Benke, Comco LLC. Thank you very much for considering this ordinance or to pass it on to the Planning Commission this evening. I just want to let you know that I have been camped out at Leone Township in Jackson County since last Thursday, so it's been a long process. I just want to let you know that I only applied for a provisioning center license because I really hope that you guys are able to move forward with working on an ordinance. I really want to make Albion my home, and I really hope that you consider it. Thank you very much.
Are there, okay.
Just one. Hello, Al Smith, 1209 Adams Street. Just like to ask you folks to remember when you're considering all of these, and I'm sure you'll consider it very closely. All the statistics and studies and all the bloviating they're going to do about all the numbers and university experiments, you can make that stuff say anything you want. You can make it for or against, so please don't put a lot of stock in that. Talk to people. People will tell you what's going on. You know, most of you who do get out into the community know that. If you talk to your constituents, they'll tell you what's going on. The only other thing I would like to point out is this is the second meeting I've been to where you've eliminated the moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. As a patriotic American, I take difference to that. Thank you very much.
Are there any?
Good evening. My name is Matthew Abel. I'm a lawyer from Detroit. Please don't hold that against me. I'm here representing HRD Industries, Jeremy Dantzler, and Jerome Harvey, and they asked me to be present tonight to give my comments. I'm a marijuana lawyer. You should know that. I'm an advocate. I'm the state director of Michigan NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, so it's clear which side I'm on here. I do a lot of public speaking and community interaction, and generally the objections that I hear are, what about the children? What about driving? And isn't this a gateway drug? The statistics show from Colorado, and because this regulation puts cannabis in the hands of trusted merchants where it's behind the counter, it's more difficult for children to access it rather than easier. Even though it might seem like it's more prevalent in the community, the fact is it already is prevalent in the community. I venture to say that you could probably obtain it at any school in the state of Michigan, maybe not the elementary schools, but certainly the middle and the high schools. What about driving? Well, statistics show that in Colorado, yes, people in traffic accidents, there is an increase in the number of people in accidents who have cannabis in their system. But that's not the cause of the accidents. That's just because no matter what measure you take of people in Colorado, there are more people who have cannabis in their system because use is up. And as far as it being a gateway drug, the National Institutes of Health and the National Institutes of Medicine published a report in January of this year showing that the states which have medical marijuana have lower incidence of domestic violence, of driving under the influence, of harmful hospitalizations from opiates, of overdoses from opiates, and deaths from opiates. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that the more cannabis there is in a community, the healthier the community is. And that's not because cannabis in itself is healthy, although it is, it's that it tends to be a replacement for other more destructive, less harmful substances. So I had a few minutes and drove around town. I don't know Albion very well. I've only been here once or twice, but just driving down Main Street, there are a lot of empty buildings that I could see that could use rehabilitation, that could use people walking on the streets and customers. And so my suggestion, if you're willing to do this, if you don't want to have more facilities than you have spaces, because you don't want it to drive out the sandwich shop and the barber shop and the antique store and all of that. We want to maintain all of those things in the community. But if you do a survey and count how many vacant buildings we have in the commercial district where you might consider putting dispensaries, that would be a reasonable cap on the number of facilities to put there. And this can create taxes, jobs, a healthier community, and less crime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right on time, actually. Thank you. Is there any further public comment this evening on the agenda item?
Tom Pitt, 115 Crandall. I'm here to urge council to, or request council to vote in favor of moving forward with drafting an ordinance for 4 of the 5 license types, all of them except the dispensary license. This is a business venture, a business operation, if you will. Not unlike many of the other manufacturing facilities here in town. Everybody makes a product. They have to process it, they have to certify it or test it to certain industry standards, and then they have to be able to transport it or distribute it. Many of the products made here in Albion aren't sold here in Albion, and this venture would be not unlike any other business here in town. It's a manufacturing operation, and I would hope that council can recognize that and recognize the value that this industry can bring to town. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, is there any further public comment on?
Hi, Nathan Fuentes. I actually live 12940, 28 and a half mile road. It's one house outside the city limit sign, but I pretty much agree with what everybody else is saying, you know, with the statistics and stuff and crime. It'd be a way of pushing out probably crime, you know, it was legalized. And Albion's missed out on a lot of opportunities over the years to have new industries, so this could be an opportunity to bring in more money. And I'm sure people that are doing it would help start other businesses with, because this is very lucrative, you know. They were saying maybe up to $1 billion for the state. So I know personally, I think it would help the city with other things. You know, Albion College can't do everything for the city. There needs to be other businesses and other people doing stuff for the city. So I would urge you guys to vote for it because it's a good opportunity for the city to start rebuilding and regrowing.
Thank you. Again, any further public comment on tonight's agenda? Okay. Thank you for your comments. Seeing there are no further agenda comments, we're going to move on to discussion, possible authorization to draft ordinances for medical marijuana facilities and issue licenses. There are a number of things involved. I think do the council members have the sheets? Did you get a chance to fill those out? Okay. So basically, there's the issue of whether we do it at all. Oh. Okay. Let's do it. We're using the forms that were passed out at the town halls, but basically, it gives us opportunity. It lists the 5 facility options and then also location options, and I guess what we have to decide, and I don't know if we want to structure this as a series of votes or one votes to go down through. because we have to decide whether or not we want to do it, which of the facilities we want, and then potential locations. Councilmember French.
So, I've been asked to read the following email by a member of my constituency who is taking their daughters to gymnastics practice. So since there wasn't enough
Oh, okay.
council to
Yeah.
provide that, I just wanted to read this. Does not necessarily reflect my views, but I told this constituent that I would read the following. If this operation is going to be in Albion, which I hope not, because it is not needed, we are a small town that is rebuilding, and this is not something I want around my children. I do not agree with medical marijuana. I believe it is a gateway drug and still considered illegal, and Marinol is legal. Federal law supersedes state law. The center cannot be downtown, it cannot be within 1,000 yards of a school or school property, a park, or a historical district. It is not considered industry, so it cannot be in the industrial park. It cannot be in neighborhoods because of zoning. I would propose that we wait. There is distribution in Jackson and Battle Creek, that is close enough. So I told this resident that I would read that.
Do we have to get name? Oh, I'm sorry. That's
I'm happy to share it. Her name is Holly Zableski. I don't have her address, but she lives on Haven Road. So, if I
Oh, yeah,
could,
sorry.
To answer your question, your comment, I think what we've got is basically a 2x2 sort of problem. Because I think some of us would vote yes if and only if we agreed on locations, right? We could say yes in principle, but only based on locations. Whereas if we vote yes or no at the beginning, we might maybe want to change our vote if we decide because we can probably all decide we don't want growers downtown, right? I mean, that's probably something we can agree to. But there may be cases where we could say, well, yeah, maybe we could say we could agree to growers in some parts of the city, but not in other parts of the city. And so what I don't want to have us do is vote in one way without knowing where the locations are going to be before we vote yes or no.
Attorney Harkness.
So just as, I guess, a point of clarification as the council is moving forward, as far as the growers go, those are under the state statute in industrial or agricultural zoned areas. We don't have any agriculturally zoned areas in the city, so that would leave it to industrial zoned areas for the growers. That's it.
Oh, okay.
That's all I had to say.
Okay. I was waiting for more.
Mayor.
Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. So the growers are the only people that have to go to an industrial place?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. But that would include light industrial, all of, I guess, all the industrial.
Yeah, the state statute just says for industrial or agricultural uses, so.
Okay. Let's see. Do you have a copy?
If I could offer a little bit of an overview. So what you have before you is what you want to contemplate relative to the 5 licensing options that are available. There's the growers, which as council had indicated is limited to the industrial areas, which in Albion includes the industrial parks, and our M classifications, which you have on your map. Within that, there are the grower classes of Class A, B, and C, which is the quantity of the plants that license would be allowed to operate. The next licensing category is processor, and then there's secure transporters, safety compliance facilities, and provisioning centers. So those are the 5 licensing types. And you have the detailed summary from the previous work session that you had in August. And I don't know if you had any more specific questions before you contemplate what you may want to approve.
Well, one of the, from my understanding, and I know there are, representatives from the entities in the audience tonight, but my understanding is that, I guess, beyond the provisioning centers, the dispensaries, the other places really can end up being very kind of discrete facilities, right? Where there's limited public access, and there's security around it, so it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be something that was like open to the public. So, and I agree with Councilmember French that, location plays a part in what you'd allow there. Let's see how to divide them.
I don't know if you recall the recommendation from staff, should you decide to go ahead with any of the licensings. We had recommended that for the growers and the processors, that they be located within the industrial zone, so that includes all the M categories. If you were looking at the other licensings, we would recommend that they also would be located there and or within the business corridor that is really along the freeway service drive in that area. We were not making recommendations for downtown corridor at all for any of those licensings at this time.
Okay. Let's see how to divide them. Yeah, I'm trying to decide how we're going to divide the vote here. Councilman French.
If I might offer a suggestion, I think it's important that we vote on whether or not this council supports the idea of any of these industries being in Albion.
That's what I was saying,
We can take
yeah.
that vote, and then we can subdivide
Okay,
other things.
okay. And that's what I was saying earlier, because we just have to know, in
Right.
principle, this doesn't bind us to a particular location, so.
Yeah, sorry.
Councilmember French and Councilmember Lawler, I'll let you.
The other thing is that what we're being asked to do is to authorize to draft ordinances. It does not say that we are approving those ordinances. So we could take a look at those ordinances and still be able to vote yes or no at a later date. Is that correct?
Well, Attorney Harkness.
Well, I mean, what I can tell you, the ordinances are gonna be, well, somewhat two-part. I mean, one, the actual ordinance authorizing the various facilities, if you choose to authorize them, are gonna be kind of lengthy, but simultaneously, there might also be zoning ordinance changes that might need to be made as a result of what you guys say. So, I mean, I can tell you this, I mean, we could put together a draft for discussion at a future council date. I mean, there's undoubtedly gonna be changes because of the length and intricacies of the ordinance, but there's potentially a two-pronged thing there, and,
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. So the recommendation is for the growers and processors to go to industrial park?
Well, the industrial and industrial park, so the manufacturing, the M categories on your map. I have my glasses. Okay, so M1, M1P, M2, and M2P.
So what, and I agree with Councilmember French, what we'll probably do is just have an initial motion to say that, the council, because we don't really have a resolution, but I guess we can at least vote to say, the council supports medical marijuana facilities, or the consideration of that as a motion, and then vote on that, and then try to dig into the details here. So be patient with us here. Councilman French.
I would also say that a yes vote in that initial space does not require us to actually say yes to anything else. It's just allowing us to proceed with the breakdown.
Yeah. Is there any other discussion before we just take a vote on, and someone have to introduce a motion to do that? But is there any other discussion about questions? Well, we can still ask questions, but, okay. Is there a motion? Councilman French.
I would move that we vote in favor of moving forward with draft ordinances for medical marijuana facilities.
Support. Moved and supported. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay. Seeing no discussion, ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Barnes.
Yes.
Reed.
No.
Brown.
Yes.
Lawler.
No.
Spicer.
Yes.
French.
No.
And Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
I don't know if the maker of the motion can vote against.
Okay.
Oh, you're right. You're
That's
right.
right, that's right. I will vote yes. I'm sorry.
You're right. Thank you.
I
I have my, very good catch. You're right. I have my
made
book
the
here.
motion, so I can't vote against it.
Very good.
That's a Robert's Rules thing. That's fine.
Okay.
I vote yes.
And that's been reflected. Okay, so to the nitty-gritty. So only the growing and processing have to be in industrial, correct?
Just the growers.
Just the growers. Okay, Councilmember French.
I just want to start a conversation by saying simply that I would be opposed to any medical marijuana facilities of any kind not being in the industrial zone. In other words, I don't want them in neighborhoods. I don't want them, in closer to town. I don't want them anywhere except the industrial zone. The people talk about the smell coming out of the growing facilities, the processing facilities. We talk about people being concerned about property values in homes near these facilities. And so I just would say that my vote is contingent that we put whatever we approve of licensing in Albion be in industrial zones. In fact, I would prefer that we actually get rid of M1 light industrial because there are sections in our city, in the middle of our city, that are zoned that way. And I would not like to see those facilities in those neighborhoods.
Councilmember Brown, and then I have a question.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to kind of expand on what Councilmember French said, give my own personal view here. I don't have objections to the industrial district, but I am not limited to only because we have that highway service district out there that could be utilized and could give the city opportunity to capture some dollars. So, I understand what you're saying, but I personally do not feel limited to just the industrial area for that reason, so.
My question is, this is not my expertise. The state has or has not promulgated regulations yet?
No.
Yes, I don't know that they're complete, but
Okay.
they've been working on them. They're not issuing licenses until the 15th of next month.
Okay. So my question is, in terms of, are there built-in prohibitions in terms of, I guess, relative to distance from, someone's saying like schools, those kinds of things?
There are, it can't be within a certain distance.
Because the first thing I think about is McAuliffe Park, but I don't know how if it's 1,000 feet, that we might be far enough away, but.
Yeah, that should be in your packet.
You know. Yeah, I want people to, they don't have the packet, so.
I think the industrial park's more than 1,000 feet away.
What's that?
I would think so, I've just,
The industrial parks would be
Yeah.
more than 1,000.
yeah.
425, probably. Well,
I wouldn't put anything in the 425 area.
Oh, okay.
That's a bad idea.
Exactly why.
Why?
Because we have agreements with other municipalities over that.
oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
I would just do it clear
Could you restate that so people could understand?
Oh, okay, so basically, there's if, I guess that's a portion of, M99, like headed out towards, the bowling alley. There's, a portion of land that the city has entered into a 425 agreement with, Sheridan Township. And basically, you know, it's for economic development, and if there are businesses or industry that goes there for a certain period of time, I want to say like 50 years, there would be a kind of a tax sharing agreement, and then after that, it would revert to us if that agreement wasn't continued, but that's a, I don't know if do we have any extra copies of these? Probably not.
I didn't bring any extra.
Oh, that's okay, that's okay. So Attorney Harkness, and
So
then,
this should be on, it's actually on page, it's marked as page 23.
could you pass them the audience? That's what I was saying, for the audience.
In your packet, no grower facility, safety compliance facility, processor facility, or secure transporter shall be within 1,000 feet of real property comprising of public or private elementary, licensed childcare facility, vocational or secondary school, so 1,000 feet away from schools. Provisioning centers have to be 2,640 feet of real property comprising public, schools again, 1,000 feet from churches, religious institutions, childcare facilities.
That's provision.
No. That's
So,
provisioning
so
center.
basically, the additional entities that it has to be far, away from are only in the provisioning.
Right, it adds religious institutions
Okay.
and provisioning centers. The other ones are just 1,000 feet away from, 1,000 feet away from schools.
Well, so then with that in mind, I'm wondering if we should go down through, because like you said, it's kind
For
of,
a suggestion.
yes, because it's kind of a
I
lot.
think maybe the council should, entity by entity, go through and whether or not it supports or approves it, and then from that point, you
Yeah.
can determine where you're gonna put it.
Yeah.
After you've decided we're in favor.
Yeah. I'm fine with that. That's, yeah, I'm fine with that. And we can start probably with the most controversial one, which would be provisioning. So if, I would entertain a motion to, we're good? Okay. I would entertain a motion to basically support or signal support for a provisioning or dispensary.
I'm gonna do it the other way, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I move that this council reject the idea of authorizing licenses
Okay, I like
for
that.
dispensaries within the city limits.
Okay. There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that? Okay. Seeing no discussion, a roll call vote. Clerk Domingo.
Yes, means you say.
Yes.
So your motion is to reject.
Yes.
Is to deny
I got you.
Yes.
the authorization of licenses
For dispensaries
for dispensaries.
or provisioning centers.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
No.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
Barnes,
Oh.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. Okay. So, so that basically cuts that off. Okay. So then,
So
Yeah,
that is off the table.
that's off the table. Yeah. I'm trying to see what's the least,
Just work our way out.
yeah. Safety compliance, which is the lab, for,
Mayor,
oh, yes, Councilmember Spicer.
thank you. One quick
Yes, ma'am.
clarification before we move on. Because the dispensary was rejected with the recent vote, at some future date, is it possible to reconsider having dispensaries?
We can always, come back and change ordinances, yes.
Next year,
But I don't know how quickly, that's.
that is a possibility.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, safety compliance, the laboratories, basically, I think, I want to say Mr. Pitt was making reference to that earlier, I believe. So, is there any discussion, questions about, and that basically can go anywhere, but it doesn't have the restrictions of the dispensary, or that, in terms of,
It has,
Can't be by a school.
it doesn't have the church stuff. and the-
No, the only one that has the church regulation was
The
provisions.
provision.
So for
Yeah.
the rest of the potential facilities, the only thing you've gotta be mindful of is 1,000 feet from school, and then when you get to growers, that has to be in the industrial area.
Okay. And I'll just say, as a thing I forgot to mention, we also, I don't know if we're gonna wait until that goes through planning or whatever, we have to decide too how many of each eventually we want. So we're not really discussing that right now, but, yeah.
And the recommendation relative to the safety compliance lab would be in the industrial areas, the M districts, and the highway service district, which is the red on your map.
Okay.
And that would be the same for the secure transporters and processors as well. And then for all of those within the M districts, the industrial.
Okay. Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you help, repeat that again, Dr. Mitchell, about the, when you said about the highway districts, that's the processors, the secure transporters, and the safety compliance labs, right?
And I guess I need some input. For the processors, are they limited to the industrial or not?
No, just the growers.
Okay. So then for the processors, secure transporters, and safety compliance, that would be the industrial areas, which are the M's for us, as well as the highway service district, which is the red or pink on your map. And for the growing facilities, they are limited by state statute to those industrial areas, which are the M's on your map. M districts,
Gray, mustard, and tan.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
So we're right now discussing the laboratory and safety compliance facility. Is there any other kind of question or discussion before we entertain a motion relative to that? Councilmember French.
Again, I think that, my guess is that anybody who would want to do any of these four would like to be able to do it all in the same facility. Simplifies transport, and I think I read in the packet that,
I'm not sure.
that you can. I thought that was a more recent. Yeah, well, you won't need the secure transportation if you have it all in one facility, so.
Do you want to speak to that?
So,
Would you like to speak?
it's my understanding that Laura came out with some of the regulations that said that they were gonna allow multiple places to operate under the same roof. I have also heard kind of shortly thereafter that may be being reconsidered, but.
Oh, okay.
But as far as I know, that's the policy right now, so.
Let's just go through the normal thing. So if there's no other discussion, I guess I'll entertain a motion to allow safety compliance facilities. Is anyone willing to make?
so moved.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Is there any other further discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, I guess a yes vote would mean we'd be approving it. A no vote would be obviously disproving that type of facility. Roll call vote. Thank you.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes,
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
No.
Barnes,
Yes.
Reed,
No.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. Okay. Well, we kind of know the locations because there's only two. Let's see.
Wait, what?
Now, I was trying to think about, do we want to talk about the locations, or are we going to go through each of the other ones? And
Each,
that's
right.
what I was saying, just to get that out the way, and then go back through it. Secure transporters. Is there any kind of questions about that? Councilmember Barnes?
I'm going to share some discussion.
Okay.
Seeing that we're taking them singular, because I felt that, seeing that it seems to be a consensus that we would keep it in the industrial area and the corridor. Lansing, Michigan has been our unofficial pilot program for the last 3 years. We have been under a moratorium awaiting results of Lansing's different experiences. Also, I've watched the states of Colorado, California, Arizona, and Washington as examples of the positive and negative effects of medical marijuana. The risk analysis, the risk ratio has been established, and it comes up to finances for those communities. And it has been established that there is a medical need, and the results have been positive for those patients who have testified to the results. And from Lansing, through all the participating states, it's been positive for that community. Amendments are always on the table. And I would ask that all three of these last ones be taken together, and because they're going into an industrial area, and we can always come back. Tomorrow, there will be drug testing by our state police and some local authorities in 5 counties in Michigan. Therefore, if the concern of violators using this medical marijuana and driving within the next year, we will be able to monitor that. I'm thinking that I'm disappointed that we're not going to be involved in allowing the residents of our city to decide on the dispensaries, because I think that's where the big money would have been for our community. But I think we should take these 3 together, and that we should recognize that the people who came to the podium tonight are speaking that they want this. And some of them are very, very professional and have had the experience, the expertise, that we should be involved in this great endeavor. We should not miss out. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, well, one, I guess in response, and I understand the concern, but also understand that this, a pretty important decision, so I think it's important to just to go, and we're moving pretty quickly through it, even though we've had opportunities to think about this in town halls and study sessions. So I think we should probably just go through each, because they are different things. So, secure transports. Okay, is there any other discussion on that? Councilmember French?
So again, we're down to these 3, and my vote may not change, but it may be that I could be convinced to vote yes for some of these, if and only if they were limited to the industrial sector.
Okay.
Like, that's it, the industrial sector.
Okay.
Not the business sector on the north side, not in, in the blue sections in town.
Okay.
But in the industrial parks.
Okay.
To the west.
Okay.
So I think that's, so if we don't put the location as part of our resolution, then that's gonna be my vote. My vote's gonna be no. Because I think that, it's probably not entirely correct that if we put businesses in the industrial park, the city doesn't get resources. I think, in fact,
Yeah,
the
that's-
opposite is true.
We're gonna have to discuss it, yeah.
So, no, I mean, in terms of, we bring in a factory and it goes into the industrial park instead of somewhere else, the city still gets money, even if it's the Tifa district or whatever. The city still gets money. Because if the EDC can become self-sufficient, all the resources we as a city are giving to the EDC become our resources, that we can be used for other things. So,
I'm from the city gives resource. I think it's just basically sustained by Tifa right now. I think that's at least from the public side.
right, but that's not entirely true. That money is still held by the city. We still have a part of our budget that goes from our coffers to the functioning of the EDC.
Does that sound right?
Say that again?
So we approve a budget for the EDC. Which
Yeah.
means that money coming from funds from the city, not solely from the Tifa district.
No,
No.
it comes from Tifa.
No money from general fund.
Yeah, the city doesn't.
Oh, I understand that, but no money from, so EDC is entirely self-sufficient, based on Tifa income.
Not just TIFA income, there's rent income that comes to the
Yeah.
EDC through different, buildings.
And if I might, if anything is the opposite, the EDC and TIFA does support some of the administrative costs of the city.
Yeah, we just approved their budget, after the board has approved their budget.
We haven't approved the budget, but we do.
No, we do.
We do, right?
Yeah. So what we can do. Well, I guess I'm just trying to think through it. If you were to allow it to go through and then voted against it once we talk about location. Yeah. Did you have?
Probably don't need my vote anyway, Karen.
Attorney Harkness.
I mean,
Just saying.
you know, I kind of offered this as a suggestion at the last time we talked about medical marijuana, so I'm just curious if whether or not it played out. Has anybody talked to any of the businesses in any of these areas?
Well, if we're talking about, you talking about in the industrial area?
Well,
Or
I'm
in
saying,
all
if
the?
we're talking about, you know, like, has anybody, you know, I mean, if we're talking about, if you guys are talking about putting any kind of business of this nature in the industrial park, has anyone asked the industries in that area, how do you feel about this? Or, you know, if we're considering putting any business in the commercial area, you know, how do those businesses feel about it? I mean, like, for example, and this is nothing against the businesses that have come to speak here tonight, but I know that certain businesses, like the Marriott franchise, might take issue with having one of these facilities in close proximity.
Yeah, I believe Councilmember French has voiced that before.
I don't know, I was
Yeah.
just curious if anyone had, what the result of any of those conversations that they had been had.
Councilmember Barnes.
Well, the horses left the barn. I mean, some of them have been contacted, some of them have made comments privately, but they haven't, taken the opportunity to come up to the podium. I have talked to some of them downtown. The ones that I've talked to do not want it there, and it's our decision now that we've decided the best place to move this ordinance is to the industrial area.
We haven't decided that
I mean,
yet.
that's the consensus. We got it on the sheet. We're having a moot point.
Okay, so are there any other discussion for the secure transporter facilities? Okay, does someone have a motion to approve or reject? Is there a motion?
Secure transportation.
Yeah.
So moved.
Support.
It's moved and supported. Any other further discussion? No further discussion. Roll call vote, please. And this is, and voting yes is to approve and no is to, this is for the secure transporter, for the transportation, or, yeah.
Councilmember Lawler,
No.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
No.
Barnes,
Yes.
Reed,
No.
Brown,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. Processors. Is there any, preliminary questions, comments, concerns about that? Councilmember French.
I'll restate that, it's gotta be in the industrial park.
Or industrial zoned.
Sure. I'm not in favor of M1.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, yeah. Any other preliminary discussion before we entertain a motion? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve, or Councilmember Barnes?
I'd like to make the motion to approve processors.
A second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay. Seeing none, Clerk Domingo, roll call please.
Councilmember Spicer,
Yes.
French,
No.
Barnes,
Yes.
Reed,
No.
Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. And growing facilities, which would have to be limited to the M classifications. Is there any kind of preliminary discussion on that? Councilmember French?
If we can restrict it to get rid of M1 from this, I would approve it.
Okay. So we're gonna have a discussion when we come back. Do you have a comment?
No, make a motion.
Okay. Is there any other preliminary discussion before I entertain a motion? Okay, is there a motion? Councilmember Barnes?
I'd like to make the motion to accept growers growing facility.
A second.
Moved and second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay. Seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember French,
Yes.
Barnes,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. Okay, so the council has approved, or it signals its support for 4 of the 5 facilities for, huh? Okay, yeah, 4 of the 5, safety compliance, lab, secure transporters, processors, and growing facilities. With the remaining 4, my understanding based from the manager and the attorney is that the growers has to be in an M classification. And then the other 3, so the processors, secure transporters, and the safety compliance / lab can be in M classifications, or really, I guess the other business and the B and M classifications, correct? Yeah. Councilmember French.
I move that we approve providing licenses for growers and growing facilities to limit their availability to M1P, M2, and M2P districts only.
Is there a second for that?
What is that, M1?
M1, M1P, M2, and M2P districts only.
Gray, tan, and mustard. Is there a second for that motion?
What was the motion again?
So basically on the map, if you look at the, just one second, if you look at the map of the city, the westernmost part of the city there, basically the gray, the mustard area, and the tan area.
So just the M1P, M2, and M2P?
Yes, that's Councilmember French's
Okay, I thought I heard you.
motion. Is there a second for that? Is there a second? Okay. Okay, so there's no second for that motion, so we're back to kind of general discussion. The one question that I have, and maybe maybe you can provide some guidance along Austin Ave, M199, the blue triangle. How much space is? There's a, if you're looking at Austin Ave, there's like a blue triangle. It's M1. How much space is that? Do you know?
Well, actually, that runs from just, I can't tell you how many acres that is,
Okay.
but that's just from the west of Pleasant Street,
Okay.
where the cell tower is there.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, John?
It's basically starting from Pleasant Street, where the cell tower, if anybody knows where the cell tower exists right now, and then runs down towards down towards 27 Mile. So the exact acreage, I'm not sure, but that's made up of a number of parcels.
Yeah. Is there, isn't there like a consumer's line or power
Yes.
thing down there that runs through there?
Yep.
Through part.
Okay.
Yeah. But not parallel to it, it runs at a 90-degree angle to it.
Okay. Maybe we can begin by, and that, your initial motion was for growing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So maybe we can do it kind of the opposite way and say where we would not want it to be at all. So Councilmember Barnes and Councilmember French.
I would like to go on record for the motion that the only two industrial and commercial districts to be eliminated would be B1 and M1. I think that.
The growers can't be in B1.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
You said eliminate it, right?
B1.
The growers can only be in M classified zoning.
He suggested.
I said eliminate.
it.
I said eliminate B1 and M1.
It's already.
B1 isn't,
B1 is a neighborhood business district.
right, you
I
can't
need
put
an
growers.
option for the growers.
Yeah, it's not an option.
Okay, well, anyway, I don't want it, okay. So anyway, just eliminate M1 off of there. If we eliminate M1, we wouldn't have it, in central residential, because I'm in precinct 1, and where that blue,
Oh.
Should I make it the other way?
Well, I have one question. Where did John go?
Right.
Oh, okay, I'm looking back there. I'm like, ready to go. I have one question. So with the, I know that the planning commission, oh, just 1 second. I know the planning commission is,
Growers can't be in B.
just give me 1 second, 'cause I want, yeah, I'm sorry.
I apologize.
No, you're good, yeah. With the new zoning that the planning commission is gonna be doing and having that facilitated, are these reflecting old or new?
These are, the districts that are on here right now are the ones that are in existence at this time.
Okay, so, and this is really kind of tentative, but do you just see some of those being collapsed into each other?
It's possible, depending on which way planning commission and then council would vote on it, as for possibly one of the M1s or a couple of the M1s actually being changed to a different district.
Okay. Attorney Harkness.
So just so I can make this clear for the council, as you're looking at your zoning maps, growers, which is what we're discussing now, cannot be in the pink area or the yellow area.
Yep.
They can only be located in the other areas that are on your map.
Blue, mustard, gray, and tan. Yeah.
Cannot be.
Can I make my motion?
So 1 second. So, and I think it's helpful to have a sense of where, I mean, I'm sure most of us know where these things are. So I mean, if you start on the eastern side of town, that blue rectangle is basically, Decker and.
The fiberglass
Yeah,
plant.
the fiberglass plant.
Off.
Yes,
There's a couple of empty.
yeah, but that's basically neighborhoods right there.
That's surrounded by residential.
Yeah, and the one question I have, which I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but we cannot approve a zoning area in part. Either it has to be in full or rejected in full, right? Yeah. I'm asking that.
I'm sorry, say that again.
With the zoning, we have to either approve a whole zoning classification or reject it. We can't approve or reject in part.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to, and the council understands it, do you want to try again?
I would like to make a motion.
Do the same one you did before.
Yeah.
I'm saying exactly the same thing I said before. That we limit growers and growing facilities to M1P, M2, and M2P.
A second.
Moved in second, discussion on that motion. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to let Councilmember French know that I misunderstood your motion. I thought you were talking about all four
Right.
facilities.
Right.
So I do apologize for
I understand.
Thank you.
So, is there any other discussion on the motion? Because I do have a question, I think it's, but I want to make sure the council members have a chance to.
Okay,
Councilmember Barnes.
yes, M2, Heavy Industrial District, would be on Albion Street, next to McAuliffe Park. And then M2 is next to McAuliffe Park, and M1P would be the light industrial. I'm precinct 1 council person, that is in precinct 2, however, if we have the growers growing facility next to the park, I'm not in favor of that. I would more like to see it in M1P light industrial, which is all that grade truly south and west of the park. I wouldn't want that, because we do have a large park there, and we're looking to develop that M2 heavy industrial district. Right now, we have a grant in there right now to assess it, and I wouldn't want that to be locked up for growers, and we got the kids playing next door to medical marijuana. Thank you.
Councilmember French, Spicer, and then I'll have a comment.
So I'm not familiar with the distances, but when I was suggesting M2, I was thinking that includes the old Harvard site.
Yep, and then.
And I don't know what the distance is, if there's any part of the Harvard site that is outside of the 1,000-foot. Is it 1,000 foot or 500 foot?
Right next to the park.
1,000, yeah. So I just don't know what those distances are, which is why I added that. I would consider it a friendly amendment to eliminate M2 from the, just because of the presence of McAuliffe Park.
So the thing I'll jump in and say is, so McAuliffe Park is at the intersection of Austin and Albion. And if you drive down Albion, there's basically a railroad track there. And then there's, I'm forgetting the name of the street, that the, thank you, that some of the water facilities and the tree dump and those things are back there. And there are some old foundations. I don't know if there's like a Union Steel back there. And I'm sure that's 1,000 feet away from the park if you go that far. So it's like, it goes back to the question I was asking the attorney earlier, is like, if someone was interested in locating in that area, they just have to make sure they're 1,000 feet away from the park. We wouldn't want to like completely eliminate
Right.
that, especially like if there's like, I don't know if the transporters can happen by rail or not. I don't know, but I would think that proximity to the railroad there would be, if that is allowed, something that would be a positive for a facility. So. So considering that, would you not make that?
Sure.
Okay. Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. If I'm reading this map correctly, the blue on the M1, the North Clark Street, would be, is that precinct 5? Not mistaken? Okay, then I would vehemently oppose having it, if it would be in the neighborhood of the ballpark field there. I would be against that.
Okay.
Just to go on record.
So yeah, I think that is the motion. Councilmember Barnes.
I'm adamant that McAuliffe Park, in the pink that we're looking at, M2, there's plenty of room, major space that's not being used in M2P, heavy industrial, down Austin off to West Michigan, and also M1P light industrial park over on Thornton Southern, that's the name of that. There's plenty of room and acreage to facilitate these plants if they come in, these businesses, if they come in without affecting the Malibu site, which we're looking to develop for some other purposes, on McAuliffe Park. I would hope that the councilman would stay with his friendly amendment, because I can't support it.
Because the other thing, if you look, like I said, if you go down Albion Street, okay, and where I call it tan, you call it pink, but where it touches the blue sliver along the river there, that's a rail line right there. So there's actually a part there that's not even in the whole, that's not the old Harvard site, that's like on the other side of the tracks that's still there.
Well, you got,
Oh, did you have a, Councilmember Lawler?
so that blue space that you're talking about, right there by the river, right?
If you go,
There
west of
is-
that.
There is, Island Park there. So,
The blue, the blue's eliminated.
is that within, gonna be far away, far enough away from Highland Park?
It'll probably, like yeah, I'm sorry.
Right.
The blue area there, which is just east of North Albion Street, runs between the river and the railroad tracks. That's where Owens Petroleum used to be, Crystal Flash used to be, and there's still a few other structures back in there.
But the what's it, MP, excuse me, the M2 section
The M2,
relative to Holland Park right there.
the M2 is on the west side of Albion Street.
So if there is 1,000 feet, it'd probably just graze that corner or,
Well, I think what you, if you have 1,000 feet, for example, as was in the staff suggestion there, from any property line, that would automatically eliminate how close you get to a park or residential or church. So,
but it wouldn't eliminate the entire zoning classification.
No.
Yeah.
it would be
Councilmember
from the property line.
Well, my point is that you're using that 1,000 feet measurement to justify putting it in there. I wanted more than 1,000 feet. I wanted it back. I mean, on both ends of that tan or pink, whatever you're calling it, there are gonna be children playing. Holland Park is on one end, McCullough Park is on another, and I think that we should move it back. I mean, they're going down Albion Street, and
Well-
I wouldn't want those kids seeing that, in my opinion, happening. And I'll leave it alone. I just don't think it should be there. We got plenty of room back there, and we should leave it back there.
So did you have anything to say? Because I mean, I had a comment unless if you didn't.
Yeah,
Councilmember French.
thank you. Councilman Barnes makes an excellent point. I don't think that the council would be in disagreement if we were to eliminate the M2 from my resolution. But let's keep the resolution the way it is and see if we get sufficient votes to pass it. I think Councilman Barnes' concerns are legitimate, but I also think that 1,000 feet is the regulation, and if we're gonna be worried about the distance more than 1,000 feet, then maybe we shouldn't
Be doing it.
be doing it at all. And so I think that's where I'm coming from.
My comment, because we're on the grower thing and it's dealing with the industrial park. So this is from us, this is from you.
That's actually from Amy Craig.
Okay, so there, does the council have the sheet with the breakdown? With the tax breakdown?
Yep, we got it.
Okay. So I'm going to kick that part off the discussion, just to put that out there. So one of the things that was referenced earlier is basically, in most of the city, if you open a business or you have a residence, you pay, you'll pay income tax always to the city, but then also for the real property tax, the city will collect that. That'll go to us, and we'll divvy that up for our needs. But there are a couple of places in town where the city basically does not collect that in deference to another entity collecting that. So that's, for example, downtown. We discussed that at, I guess, a recent meeting, that businesses down there, if they are paying taxes, that goes to DDA for their property tax. And then there's also what's called a TIFA, which is a tax increment finance authority, which covers the industrial park, which is probably, I'd say, the gray area and the mustard area on the map. Is that? That's correct, okay. So one of the things that, I'll be very just frank and we can have a discussion about is, when I look at this issue, because the voters in the referendum several years ago approved it, and medical marijuana is legal in Michigan, it's not a question for me about, debating about, if it should be here. I mean, it's really more of a public policy for me regarding the additional financing it could provide to the city to do certain things that I know that residents are asking us about. So streets, sidewalks, those kinds of things. And so my initial concern was if solely placing it in the industrial park would be the best thing. I know we also, council and council members and myself, we've talked about wanting to strengthen job opportunities and economic development in the community. So that's important. But that's a consideration I think that we should talk about and bring that up. So I was wondering if, if there was any other, concern about that. That's why, that's part of the reason why I want to leave the M2 in there. Do you want to, would you like to speak to, or would Amy? Councilmember French.
Sorry, I'm confused about what we're doing.
Well, basically,
I have a resolution on the floor.
mhm.
Are we getting
Well, this-
information about?
Yeah, this is relative to that, because what you're doing, you're reducing locations, and I'm saying is if we're reducing locations, we have to take that in consideration in terms of where the tax funding flows to once we reduce locations. Would you want to speak to?
Would I want to speak to where the tax money goes?
Or to the sheet?
I prepared that sheet for, one of the town halls
Okay.
some time ago.
Okay.
And I didn't even.
Oh, yeah, can you come to the mic? Yeah.
I'm pretty good at screen reader. I didn't bring a copy of it with me tonight. Oh, of course you've got one. Or my glasses. So what's the questions on it? Because these were based on a sample project that's outlined at the top. And it was based on estimates so we had to make some assumptions and we went ahead and listed those. What's the questions?
Well, just, there's, the assumption here is basically if the facility was located in the industrial park.
Yes.
Okay. So then if it was not, I guess my assumption would be that, I don't know,
If it wasn't, that the line item that says economic development would get $12,000, that would go to the city coffers.
Okay.
Unless it was in a DDA, then it would go to the DDA.
and so that was basically the thing the reason why I wanted to at least keep the option open for including M2, just in case. And I guess, well, I'll leave that for later. Are there any other questions? Thank you. I appreciate it. Are there any other questions right now we have on the floor? Councilmember French's motion that was seconded by Councilmember Reed. Oh, okay, Reed, to limit grower and growing facilities to M1P, M2, and M2P. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Barnes?
No.
Reed?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Lawler?
Yes.
Spicer?
No.
French?
Yes.
And Mayor Brown?
Yes. So the remaining processors, secure transporters, safety compliance. And those basically can be, unlike growers, they can be in the B and M zoning classifications. Let's start with processors, and we'll go down. Councilmember Fridge.
I would move that we limit our processors to the identical areas in which we are limiting growers and growing facilities to M1P, M2, and M2P.
Is there a second for that motion? Moved in second. Is there any discussion of that motion? Councilmember Brown.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would just hope that we would consider the Highway Service District as well, since it's possible. I do not have a problem excluding B1, the Neighborhood Business District, but I think the Highway Service District is a location that we could utilize.
So we're, just for reference for those, we passed some maps out. I don't know if they're being circulated around. But we're talking about the red part. This would basically be, let me look at that, from a little south of Watson Street up to where I guess the old Ponderosa BP gas station is. And then it would extend, if you go down Beamer, to that kind of wooded area there between Beamer and the highway. And then it would also go, kind of cover where I guess Tractor Supply is and Label Shoppers, and then back there where, what's that, is it a Best Western still back there? But basically where Oakland's, the dialysis center is at, the medicals, yeah, so that part. So basically fronting the highway, almost. Is there any other discussion on that? Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Brown that we should consider the red, pink, whatever you want to call it, area.
For processors.
Right.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Are you open to making a friendly amendment, Councilmember Barnes? French, or?
No, let's just
Okay.
vote this one down.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you don't know how.
It might be.
Okay, Councilmember French.
If I may, again, there's enough division in our community about whether or not we should have these facilities. And I would just like to create a smaller footprint for all of these facilities into a small part of our community, so we can take advantage of the jobs that are being offered, but we're not advertising to the world that this is going on, right? Because I think there are enough people in our community who are like vehemently opposed to any and all of this. And I just think that if we have things in multiple places, and we're gonna have trucks transporting cars, transporting materials from one facility to another facility, and that increases the need for security, it increases the need for public safety to be on the lookout, and so I just prefer to have everything sort of in one space. My guess is that many of our businesses that are gonna do this would also like to have it all in one space, and so.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that the Highway Service District is right near the highway. It's right near 94, which is why I hope that we consider utilizing it. It's right out there by the highway. They won't have to come through town if they're transporting.
Yeah, but the growers are gonna be transporting.
I have the floor. Point of order, please.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilmember.
So, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
The other thing I'll interject here is, again, we determine how many of each type of license we approve. So, we could say, we're gonna give, I don't know, I'm just making something up. We'll give 10 licenses for growers, but then we might say, okay, we only want 2 for processors. Now, the one question I have, and it's kind of going back to what Councilmember Barnes mentioned, and I'm just curious, beyond what the state requires in terms of distances, do we have the power to increase that through our ordinances if we wanted to?
I mean, we can add certain local regulations to our local ordinance. I guess what I would suggest to council is, this, I think, is gonna be a multi-meeting discussion, because you're gonna have a 20-page ordinance coming to the council, and I'm sure you're gonna have tweaks, whether it be distances, whether it be, there's other things you guys are gonna have to consider, like what type of growing facility, what class growing facility, all that stuff, so certainly additional regulations can be considered.
Okay.
Quite frankly, there's a discussion that I would like to have with council about things that other municipalities have done, included in their local ordinances, that I think this council should consider when crafting our ordinance. So I guess the short answer to your question is yes, there are additional regulations that you can put on at the local level.
Okay. And I guess the one thing I'll hop in and say too is, like, when I look at that area, there are already businesses there. So I think that we're basically talking about the space behind the, AutoZone, Family Dollar, Albion Tire place, because a lot of these other, there's like chemical banks there, and there's already a lot of business there already. So I don't think that there might not even be enough space to do it. So, but is there any other discussion on? So basically, the motion on the floor right now is Councilmember French's motion to restrict processors to just M1P, M2, and M2P. Is there any other further discussion on that? Okay. It's been moved and seconded. I'd ask for a roll call vote on Councilmember French's motion.
Councilmember Reed,
Can you repeat that now that we've
Oh, okay.
15 minutes to?
So basically, we've, basically the same bounds, so basically the gray, mustard, and tan peach. Basically, Councilmember French wants to restrict processing to that, just that area.
Yes.
Brown,
No.
Lawler,
No?
Spicer,
No.
French,
Yes.
Barnes,
No.
and Mayor Brown.
No. Is there, so as it stands right now, processing still is open to B and M categories. Is there any other? Councilmember Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to move that we restrict the processors to B3, M1, M1P, M2, and M2P.
Are you saying M1?
No, I'm sorry, not M1. I'm sorry, to just B3, M1P, M2, and M2P.
Support.
Moved in support. Is there discussion on that? So this would basically be on the map, again, the gray, mustard, kind of tannish peach area, and then the red highway service district, the north part of town. Is there any discussion? Further discussion?
I just think that
Councilmember Reed?
it has been in the past a restaurant there, and it would be a good place when that's all torn down and everything for a restaurant. And that would seem to me a better place.
Okay.
For people traveling, could pull right off, you could get right on back on the highway than the processing.
So my understanding, and maybe John can provide some guidance, could something even go right there? It's probably too small, I would think.
What is that?
Councilmember Reed, I think you're referring to the old Ponderosa site, right?
Yes. I was just saying, that would be a nice site for a restaurant when that's all cleaned off and everything.
It's still feasible for a restaurant to go there, yes.
But I guess my question is, a processing facility, that would not be enough space for,
Wouldn't be sufficient.
A processing facility? Probably not.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know how big an area they need,
yeah.
but, so,
Yeah, my understanding is like, it's basically, I'm basically looking at the area that's north of Beamer Street.
yeah. I'm not familiar to the size of building that they need for processing.
Okay,
but
okay. Councilman Bryant.
I think that it seems to be the spirit of accenting the negative of medical marijuana. We have a medical facility there, medical marijuana next to a medical facility. I mean, easy on access, easy off access, and we have the ability to regulate the number of licenses that we give. And thank you.
Is there further discussion on Councilmember Brown's motion? Okay, so I'll restate the motion and then ask a roll call. So this motion would be to allow processing facilities in M1P, M2, M2P, and B3 zone districts. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
No.
Barnes.
Yes.
Reed, and Mayor Brown.
Yes. Secure transporters. Is there a motion for that? Well, I do have one question. To the manager's knowledge, has anyone expressed interest in that?
Not
Do we-
specifically.
Okay. Okay. Now, are there, okay. Is there any discussion, initial discussion? Okay, can I entertain a Councilmember Lawler?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask, Councilmember Barnes about the collaboration of the processors, the transporters, and the lab. Just help me out here. You said that you think they all three should go together?
Well, yeah, I'm taking it as you addressing me now, but, so there's a question about them going together. Is there any other discussion about that?
My research has shown that they all have worked together unilaterally in other states. And my thinking was if we had them all working together in certain areas, would be okay with me. I was trying to hope that we could put them all in industrial districts and move forward from there.
Attorney Harkness.
So, we had touched on this earlier. I mean, it's my understanding that Laura has, licensing and regulatory affairs has said, at least, my understanding, at least tentatively, that they're going to allow businesses to theoretically operate under the same roof. That being said, the state statute is clear under many provisions that in order to get, for example, a processor license, the applicant and each investor and the processor cannot also have an interest in a secure transport license or a safety compliance facility. So while they can operate under the same roof, they have to be devoid of those interests.
Interesting. Thank you. Is there a motion for, to either approve all of them or restrict? Oh, Councilmember Lawler.
So I'm just trying to get clarification. Our attorney says that these three cannot operate under the same roof?
No, they can operate under the same roof. It's just, what I was trying to point out is they can't, the person applying for the license and investors in that, for example, a processor cannot have an interest in a secure transporter or a safety compliance facility. So they can be under the same roof, but.
It'd have to be another.
Right, it'd be like another entity or something.
One big building, but two different companies, basically. Councilmember Spicer.
Motion?
For,
Motion to restrict transporters to areas B3, M1P, M2, and M2P.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Support.
Moved in second, is there any other discussion on limiting secure transporters to those four districts, B3, M1P, M2, and M2P? Okay. Seeing no other discussion, I ask for a roll call vote. Clerk Domingo.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
No.
Barnes.
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. And finally, Safety Compliance Laboratory. Is there a motion to accept all of the zoning or to restrict that? Councilmember Barnes.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept Safety Compliance Lab in Industrial and Commercial Districts, B3 Highway Service District, M1P Light Industrial Parks, M2 Heavy Industrial District, M2P Heavy Industrial Parks in the city limits of Albion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Is there any discussion? Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to know if we will be willing to just do the B3, the M1P, M2, and the M2P.
Yeah, that was the motion.
I thought he said the M1.
No.
No, he didn't. Okay.
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. I think it just makes perfectly good sense that all of these are in the restricted area, and I can support the motion.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, this motion is to limit safety compliance facilities to B3, M1P, M2, and M2P. And I'll ask the clerk Domingo for a roll call.
Councilmember Spicer,
Yes.
French,
No.
Barnes,
Yes.
Reed, Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. So we've basically determined that for the 5 facilities, the city is, okay, Attorney Hutton.
I'm sorry, the other thing that I think would be helpful, at least for purposes of tonight, as we start to draft the ordinances, as it relates to growers, there are 3 different classifications, A, B, and C, 500 plants, 1,000 plants, 1,500 plants, for the council to make a determination of which of those classes the council wants to authorize.
And that basically boils down just to the size of the facility.
Yes.
You can do that. Councilman French.
Do we have an idea of how many square feet a facility needs for each of these 3 classes, so we get an idea? Because in my mind, if we're gonna do this, it might actually be easier if we settle on a number of plants, say 5,000, right? So if someone wants to buy all of those, then they get the permits to get that number. But if we have, in other words, we can support both small growers and large growers, rather than to sort of say how many of each.
One question, a follow-up question to that is, so when we do the licensing, so, okay, for example, there's, a license for the lab, okay, and that's just one license for that.
Right.
But what you're saying is with the grow, it's actually 3.
There's 3 different types of
Okay.
grow.
So it might, if the council wants to do that, I don't want to bias it, if we want to leave that open to select between kind of larger and smaller operations, we might as well just approve, say that we're interested, but then when it comes to licensing, we can determine how many we want to give of each particular.
I mean, when we do the ordinance, yeah, I mean, you could say we're gonna authorize all 3, but we'll do no more than 2 Class C licenses,
Okay.
or maybe no more than 4 Class B, or however we wanna do it, yeah.
Okay. So, and that's something we can determine at a later date.
That we can do at a later date.
Yeah,
I
okay.
just offered that as a suggestion, because that's something the council's gonna have to determine at some
Okay.
point.
So I'd ask, is there a motion just to approve all 3 classifications of, I guess, tiers of growers?
Second.
Moved in second. Is there any discussion? Okay. Roll call vote, please. Councilman
Councilmember French,
No.
Barnes,
Yes.
Reed, Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
No.
Spicer,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. So what would be helpful, just a discussion about next steps, and I guess the ping pong with planning commission, so.
So in terms of the next steps, we will need to draft the ordinance relative to the authorization of the various licenses, and then for the planning commission to also be working on the ordinance relative to the zoning specifications as you have already outlined.
Attorney Hart.
I'm happy to start working on that. Because of the detail involved though, I would request that it be on first meeting.
Okay. Did you have a question? Okay. The one question I have, and I remember having this question at the study session, so the criteria for how we evaluate, I know that was referenced by one of the speakers at public comments. Is that going to be separate from the ordinance, or is that going to be built into the ordinance?
We'll build that into the ordinance.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Kind of like if you kind of think of it the same way, we have some other ordinances in the book that's called criteria for evaluating
Okay.
licenses. We kind of treat it the same way.
Okay. Is there any other discussion relative to this, because this is kind of discussion authorization? Any other comments from council on this? Councilmember Law.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is just a question. Are we able to, make a decision or a suggestion that, hopefully we can find someone to take all three of these in one specific area, where it's not all over? Or is that something we can talk about later?
I would think, kind of going back to what you were just saying, and Attorney Harkness can let me know, but could that be built, could a preference be built for enterprises that kind of?
Well, I mean, so now you authorize the areas where they could operate, so
Yeah.
hypothetically, assuming the zoning, everything goes through, I mean, based on what you authorize tonight, they could operate under one roof, but they could operate in any of those
But
three or four areas.
But could we give a preference in granting a license? You know, if three entities said we're going to do it in the same mega facility, we'll give you preference.
I would be hesitant, when you use the word preference, I don't want, you don't want to run into an issue where you've authorized facilities to operate in 4 locations and you're giving deferential treatment to those that operate in the certain 3. I mean,
Okay.
I think to keep things above reproach, I would steer clear of that.
Okay. Is there any other discussion from council on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward. Everyone is here. Public comments. Persons addressing the city council shall limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. Proper decorum is required, and state your name and address. Is there any general public comment this evening? Mr.
First, real quick, Andrew Texel, 1112 East Porter, one of the AmeriCorps Vistas at City Hall. Just giving a final update on the amazing rake this weekend. It's from Sunday, 2 to 4. Volunteers from the AmeriCorps Vista program and Albion College will be going around to homes, people with limited mobility, to rake and bag their leaves. If you know anyone who might be interested in that service, if they're in the city of Albion, send them our way. You can call at 517-629-7188. Tomorrow is going to be the last day that we're signing up people because, like I said, it's right around the corner. So, yeah, final update. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember French. Oh.
I can talk to that.
What?
You should be thanking some people, don't you think? Like the bag supplier?
Yes, thank you, Cheryl Mitchell. And also everyone at Albion College is helping, Pam Schuler. Thank you, Catherine. She interviewed us the other day and
a great piece out in the Albion Recorder, so
Thank you.
thank you.
Mayor, if I might, and thank you, Andrew, for sharing that information. Myers has the bags on sale, $199 for 5, and I bought 120 to donate for the project.
Thank you. Mr. Loomis.
Hey, where is it going?
J. Loomis, 408 West Ash Street. I know you guys won't answer questions, so I just give you my thoughts that I was thinking of this. I only got a quick look at that map there. At one point, Albion city limits is 2 miles. City limits to city limits in a square, 1,000 feet is 1/5 of 1 mile. Almost every industrial park that I was looking at, with the exception on the one outside. You talked about the one by the water department, which runs along the river. McClure Park runs the entire existence of that river. It's definitely within 1,000 feet of that spot. Pretty much what you talked about along that little area up there where you drive in from the freeway. I don't know how big the school footprint is. However, I do know when they brought the sewer out of the diabetes, they had to buy or easement from the school. That puts that within 1,000 feet of old Kmart. And you would be able to think about this. I do believe Reverend Trammell bought the property to build his church behind Tire City, which then makes 1,000 feet the other direction. Your only area that I can figure that's not within 1,000 feet of a church or a park, because you can even go up into Guardian and talk about that area, Ketchum Field, which is definitely a park because they couldn't sell that to Guardian without a vote of the people, although it's Knopf. But your only area that's not within 1,000 feet of a park is the industrial parkway on the outside of town. Also, the Chiefs area, which I love this as I thought about it, you guys made a dog park right there, easily within 1,000 feet of that Union Steel building. Thank you very much.
So again, my name is Kristen Tenza. I'm a representative of Wild Bill's Tobacco.
Just 1 second. Can we please respect the speaker? Thank you.
As I said, my name is Kristen Tenza, and I'm a representative of Wild Bill's Tobacco and Oasis Wellness Center. I would like to take a second in refutation to the motion that was made to advocate for provisioning centers. For the Oasis Wellness Center, we recommend 1 for every roughly 10,000 people, so we would recommend 1 provisioning center in Albion. In terms of processor, grower, safety compliance, and secure transport, those are essentially cogs in the chain. They all funnel into the provisioning centers. If you remove provisioning centers from that chain, you're essentially inviting illegal activity into your city. MMMA patients will go to dispensaries and not caregivers who are illegally growing and harvesting, and that is actually why the MMFLA was drafted, because there were so many problems with the MMMA and caregivers harvesting and growing illegally and then selling that over to patients. So that really minimizes or eradicates that problem. CVS, Rite Aid, other pharmacies, those are accessible in town. You do not want your constituents going out of town for their medicine, and it honestly is an absurd request. Many medical patients suffer from extremely debilitating conditions. I know this as a patient myself and as a friend of many patients. I suffer from extreme PTSD as a result of tragically losing my father at 19 years old. At times, my flashbacks are so intense that I'm not even able to operate a vehicle. So to ask patients with extremely debilitating conditions to drive a long way for their medicine, again, as I said, that is an absurd request, and it's not representing your constituents. It's doing the exact inverse of them. Provisioning centers under the MMFLA are out in the open and can be monitored very closely. Again, I'll refer to what I sent out in the formal correspondence to everyone. It's the Lansing scoring and rubric system. It ensures that good commercial actors are running the business, that you are able to heavily and properly vet these applicants. And lastly, I'd just like to say, under the MMFLA, these provisioning centers are safe, they're regulated, they're tracked, they're out in the open. I believe in 2008 with the MMMA, Albion was 64% So this is something that your constituents want, and again, I'll just reiterate that it is an absurd request to ask patients who need their medicine to go a far drive to obtain it.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Once again, Peter Benke from Comco. I know that there's a large discussion regarding the setbacks, what you would call the 1,000-foot rule. In Leone Township, the way that they've addressed it is that they've asked all applicants to go directly to a surveyor and show that the piece of property that they're looking to establish their company on to prove to you that they're outside of that rule, that you have a survey showing that. Leone was talking about as the crow flies, what they actually decided upon is that it would be doorway to doorway. So just something to consider as you move forward. And I thank you very much for your consideration and all your hard work this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any?
Good evening again. My name is Matthew Abel. I'm at 2930 East Jefferson Avenue in Detroit. First of all, I beg to differ with Mr. Harkness. I don't believe, and I'm relatively certain, there is no statewide distance in the MMFLA, that the only requirement about citing locations is that the growing can only be in the industrial, agricultural, or unzoned areas. There is no 1,000-foot rule, I challenge, in any of the ordinances. The 1,000-foot rule is a drug-free zone which only applies to crimes that are committed in a drug-free zone. Those drug-free zones under state law are schools, libraries, and parks. And in this case, there is no crime being committed. These are authorized acts, and so you certainly can say you can't be within 1,000 feet of a park if you like to, but you don't need to. Furthermore, you don't need to say you can grow anywhere in an I-2 or an M2 or whatever. You can say you can only do it on 4th Street or whatever. You can pick a specific area however you like, as long as it's not spot zoning. You should know that in the next couple of weeks, we're going to file the petitions for legalization. It's going to be on the ballot in 2018. And what you need to know about that is that the tax money is only going to flow for the provisioning centers. There will not be tax money flowing, as there is under the Medical Act, for growing, processing, transporting, and labs. Under the legalization adult use, the tax money is only going to flow for the provisioning centers. So if you don't have any provisioning centers, you're going to make money on the medical, but that's a small drop in the bucket compared to the money that's going to be made through adult use. What you're saying is it can be grown here, it can be tested here, it can be processed, it can be packaged, but it can't be sold here. So it's going to be transported to Marshall or to Jackson or to Lansing, and then the patients here are going to have to drive to Marshall or to Jackson or to Lansing or to Ann Arbor or Kalamazoo because they can't buy it here. I think that's crazy. That will bring workers, but it will not bring any consumers or purchasers. Those people will come to this town and purchase not only cannabis, but food, gas, t-shirts, other goods and services. You should use this as an economic development measure. This is not just about cannabis, this is about urban redevelopment. And furthermore, there is no need to cap the number of licenses. I fully understand that many people don't like it's being sold. And so you might say we're only going to allow 4 dispensaries in this town. But there is no reason to cap the number of growers, processors, transporters, or laboratory testers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment this evening? Okay. Seeing none, I would entertain
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.